Hello everyone, welcome to KbeatZ Gone Crazy. I'm KbeatZ and welcome to a story of how I defeated the Unova Pokemon League using only Serperior, not phase 1 but the second phase. This is the Serperior I actually used for my playthrough. Mild nature Serperior is a special attack increasing and physical defense lowering nature, which is not great because Serperior really do need that defense. The movesets I used to run on Serperior, and I will tell you what item I ran as well. So throughout the whole game, my Serperior ran leftovers, which will increase Serperior's health, turn by turn. The different movesets I used to actually be able to tackle with some of these Elite Four members. So I won't be talking about the playthrough. You can check out my Serperior only playthrough from start to finish until the phase 1, or should I say the Cynthia battle in Undella Town. You can check on my streams. I have put all of them in a playlist. You can go check them out. So this winning attempt took me like probably almost 40 minutes. So I will be breaking down all 5 of the battles in the Unova Pokemon League one by one, and I will tell you my strategy and what I have learned from all my losses before actually I was able to complete this challenge. So stay tuned and, well, enjoy the video. So the Pokemon League has 5 different members in it, strong trainers, which are specialized with 5 different types each. And I have strategies to all 5 of them with Beato, but it's not that different from each other. It's just setting up and attacking, but I chose to do the most challenging Elite Four member first, then I go for the others. The main strategy for the solo run is to use the move Coil numerous times. In order to achieve this step, Beato has to stay alive, and that's where Leech Seed and the leftovers come in handy. So they will heal 1/8 and 1/16 of Beato's health, which means within 5 turns, Beato will be able to almost fully heal if he didn't take damage from his opponent, of course. Here's the most challenging Elite Four member to Beato, Shondell. Shondell is a Ghost type specialist and has a full team of 6 Ghost type Pokemon. Just for quick note, Beato can learn 4 moves, and I have locked in 3 permanent moves, namely Coil for setup, Leech Seed for extra healing, and Leaf Blade for stab damage. In other words, same type attack boost is that, I believe. The 4th move is decided depending on the opponent you face. And yeah, my playthrough pick was Return, which is a normal move, and I will be talking about it later, which doesn't actually hit Ghost type Pokemon. So here is how I decided my 4th move. Here are Shondell's Pokemon: Cofagrigus, Frostlass, Chandelure, Drifblim, Golurk, and Mismagius, and this was the exact order she will be letting out to defeat Beato. And I faced a lot of problems trying to defeat her. The first problem was her first Pokemon, Cofagrigus. Cofagrigus spams on the 2 moves at Beato, namely Shadow Ball and Will-O-Wisp, both of which are fatal against Beato. Beato was able to take Shadow Ball well, but when that 20% kicks in and drops his special defense, that's where Beato had a hard time keeping up. But Shadow Ball wasn't the real problem here. It was the Will-O-Wisp. Since inflicting burn on Beato can be a serious problem, which will cut his physical attacks by 50%, which makes the setting up pretty useless. So I had to do something about it. Do you remember I was talking about Return being useless in this battle? That's where my fourth move comes in. Instead of return, I chose to teach taunt. Taunt prevents opponents from using status moves for 3 turns, including Will-O-Wisp. And then comes the second problem. The third slot was where Beato has to face Chandelure, who has very high special attack, and Beato would never ever tank a hit from Chandelure. Chandelure also is not very effective from grass type moves, which is the only move Beato has as a damaging move. So, in order to one-hit KO Chandelure, Beato has to set up exactly 4 coils with Cofagrigus as well to beat the entire lineup, which is why Shadow Ball was an issue. Now you might understand. Finally, with all the strategies, I pre-planned the battle and I faced Chantal. And this is how the battle went. Enjoy. Next up, I chose to battle Marshall, the fighting type specialist. I chose this guy, it's because this guy is the easiest one out of all the Elite Four members. His team consisted of Throw, Sock, Medicham, Mienshao, Conkeldurr, and Lucario. For this one, I didn't need a lot of preparation, so I just went with it. I made a small mistake. I was supposed to do something after the Chantal's battle, but it doesn't really affect the attempt. But I have conditions applied to the past few attempts. I think this is the right time to explain those to you. Here they are. Number 1. This is a Serperior only run. In other words, it's a solo run. So I'm not allowed to have 2 or more Pokemon in this run. I only should have a Serperior, only 1 Serperior. Number 2. I'm not allowed to use healing items and status restoring items in battle and in between battles as well. There is a chance I might break this rule, but I'll try to keep it up. Number 3. I'm not allowed to use PP restoring items, including Ether, Elixir, Lepaberry, etc. Number 4. What I'm allowed to do is changing moves and items in between battles, right? I have to mention something that I'm allowed to do without being too pressured, right? Number 5. I am not allowed to save after the victory against any of the Elite Four members, including the champion. If I lose to any of the Elite Four members, I have to restart the whole Pokemon League from the beginning. I have to defeat all 5 members in one run. Because of these conditions, I probably lost 15 or 20 attempts, so it wasn't easy at all. You all saw how I performed with Chantal, right? About the mistake I was talking about. The mistake I did was that it's a misremembering. I was supposed to change Taunt with Return because I needed to not finish the PP of Leaf Blade. Guess I have to Leaf Blade through Marshall's team. Back to Marshall. So I've mentioned his lineup and none of his Pokemon is seen as a threat to Beato, because most of them are physical attackers. But my Beato is trained to bulk up physically to withstand those moves. His first Pokemon, Throw, feels like a Magikarp, so setting up is very easy. To sweep his whole team, I only have to coil thrice. If it's anything that's going to affect this run with Marshall, he has to critical hit Beato each and every turn. And that's all for this one. Enjoy the battle. Next is Caitlyn, the Psychic type specialist. Her lineup is Mushana, Sigilif, Gallade, Reuniclus, Metagross, and Gothitelle. This time there are no changes except for the move change I was supposed to do before Marshall's battle. Caitlyn is a tough matchup because there are two Pokemon that I have trouble getting through, but one of them is manageable. Let's talk about the troubling one. Mushana is Caitlyn's first Pokemon, and Mushana's moves against Beato is Yawn and Dream Eater. The scariest starting Pokemon to face with in the whole Pokemon League, in my opinion. In this battle, I decided to delay the setup with a different Pokemon. I also have the option to use Taunt instead of Return, but remember, I cannot rely on Replay too much, because I cannot restore my PP according to the rules. My strategy is to knock out Mushana as fast as possible, but I will try to sneak in one coil so I can be able to knock out the following Pokemon Sigilif, and then I will set up a little further with a different Pokemon in the future. Metagross is the strongest Pokemon of any Elite Four trainer has used, and this thing is a tank. The reason why Metagross is the manageable one is because he's a physical attacker, and by the time Beato faces Metagross, Beato will be already a hard hitter and a tank himself. This battle is interesting, and I actually have nothing more to say. Give it a check. And finally, the last Elite Four member is Grimsley. Grimsley is a dark type specialist. His lineup consists of Liebird, Houndoom, Scrafty, Bishop, Hunchcrow, and Crocodile. Alright, this guy is tricky. Sometimes he's piece of cake, but also sometimes he's a nightmare. Starting with Liebird. Liebird is the most annoying one out of every first Elite Four Pokemon. The reason is that it uses all 4 of its moves. Fake Out is its first move, and unlike Marshall's Mean Show, Liebird holds an item that increases the power of Fake Out, the normal gem. The elemental gems were gimmick for Generation 5, just like Mega Evolution for Generation 6 and Terrestrialization for Generation 9. These gems existed within all 17 types, and if a Pokemon holding a gem uses a damaging move of the corresponding type, that move does 50% more damage. Therefore, Liebird's Fake Out does 60 damage. Right. Beato flinched. It's fine, he can attack next turn. Wrong. Liebird has Attract. Probably my most hated move ever in Pokemon video game history. I wonder why. Attract works against opposite gender, and by sheer luck, Liebird is a female and Beato is a male. Game Freak should make Attract not have an effect against a maximum friendship Pokemon, and besides, power of friendship is stronger than power of love. Right? Enough ranting. This is another occasion I need to knock out Liebird and set up with a different Pokemon in the future. And of course, I need to coil at least once in the first turn, so I can deal with Houndoom next turn. I am not done with Liebird yet. Liebird has Aerial Ace, and it never misses. Super effective, but it's at least not stab damage, and it's a physical move. And next, I thought Houndoom was going to be a huge threat, but apparently it has very bad defense. Beato always outspeeds Houndoom, so maximum friendship return from a level 100 Serperior would blow it to the moon. But the real problem was still on the way. It was Bishop. Bishop's best stat is its physical attack, so sometimes even one coil isn't enough because it also has X-Scissor. I wonder why with this condition Game Freak decided to give this guy another evolution to this lineup. I'm looking forward to coil thrice again, and things went wrong a little. Check it out. You'll probably like it. Right. So this didn't go as planned. I tried to heal at the end of Grimsley's crocodile, and I tried to set it up. I tried to heal, but you know, the critical hits came in, you know, Scrafty with the critical hit, and you know, Bishop went with the excessor pressure, and a lot of stuff happened. I tried to, you know, break it through, but unfortunately I couldn't heal at the end, and I had to break the rule, the second rule, and either way we made it through, Beato and I'm actually proud of him as well. Finally, each and every member of the Elite Four were defeated, but one trainer was still remaining, the champion Iris. Iris is a dragon type specialist, which is already a threat to Beato. Her team is Hydreigon, Lapras, Druddigon, Archeops, Aggron, and Haxorus, which I don't actually know the lineup yet because I have only gone until Druddigon, and Druddigon knocked out Beato every time. So you can see that this is a very, very bad lineup to Beato. Very bad team. All of these Pokemon are level 76 or higher. 5 of them being strong against Beato. And Aggron is the only Pokemon that's suitable for setup, but I actually don't know where it'll be in the lineup. So that's not great. So I have to find a way to set up my Beato using her first Pokemon, Hydreigon. But how do I make this work? There is no chance Beato stands a chance against Unova region's pseudo-legendary. And Hydreigon's best stat is special attack, which is already a bad sign for Beato. Making it worse, Hydreigon has Fire Blast and has 10% chance to burn the opponent. It just keeps getting worse and worse. Lapras has Blizzard, Druddigon has Fire Punch holding a Life Orb, Archeops has Acrobatics and doesn't even have a held item. With this setup pressure, how can I find my way through the final battle? My eyes are on Hydreigon. Beato has to survive through the first Pokemon. Hydreigon doesn't hold any items, and I only see one threat, Fire Blast, and its side effect Burn. Beato has to tank the super effective move for several turns and has to get ready for the Burn as well, you know. Since Hydreigon goes for Fire Blast, which is a special attack, and in Generation 5, we didn't have a held item that helps against special attacks. So my only option was to remove the move Return. Yes, I'm gonna sweep Iris team using only Leaf Blade, and I'm counting on it. And in substitute for Return, I taught Beato Light Screen. Light Screen reduces special damage by 50% and is crucial to tank Fire Blast, and I replaced Beato's held items, the leftovers. Yes, I had to replace leftovers as well to a Roast Berry, and I have never checked how Roast Berry is gonna go. I have never used a Roast Berry in my life. So I decided to give Serperior the Roast Berry to heal a potential burn, and I didn't know how this would affect the battle actually, because this was my first time using Light Screen and Roast Berry together. And until then I used a lot of leftovers, I used Dragon Tail, I used Return with different strategies, none of them worked. And this was the only strategy after all of that Serperior is able to pull off. So I don't know how this is going to go. I look for the options and strategies, and none of them felt confident to me. And if this strategy did not work, I may have to give it up. And yeah, enjoy the final battle. I wanted to speak a few words before I actually finish this run. Beato, I met Beato when Beato was level 5, and then battled with Tepig. We went on, fought hard through, even though he had a bad nature. And you know, there were drawbacks when it came to grass types. Not a very good offensive type as well, not a very good defensive type as well. It's very neutral, maybe, you know, less than average even. But you know, I am a grass type enthusiast myself, and I believed what a grass type Pokemon's potential, especially a grass type starter's potential, could be, and evolved into a Servine. And Servine by himself was able to defeat the whole poison gym, the gym leader Roxy, and then we went on. Servine evolved into my favorite starter of all time, and then battled on and on. There were many gym leaders that had very high advantage over Serperior, but we went on, we moved on, we defeated Skyla, we defeated Drayden, a steel type specialist like Chorus, you know, a lot of steel types in that lineup as well. We also defeated legendaries. We defeated Cobalion, Virizion, Terrakion, the Swords of Justice, and then we went on to defeat the box art legendary itself, and that's White Kyurem. Beato fought on to defeat White Kyurem by himself, and then we fought Team Plasma leader KbeatZ. All 6 of his Pokemon I defeated by Beato himself, and then the phase 1 of the Elite Four and the champion, I thought I defeated them, but it wasn't that huge of a challenge. So then that's why this video came out. And then at last I defeated Cynthia by Beato himself, and that was a huge accomplishment as well. Never thought Beato would be able to do it. And by far the biggest challenge Beato had to face was phase 2, the second phase of the Pokemon League, the Unova Pokemon League. Very proud of what Beato was able to accomplish in the solo run, and I never thought I can go further to actually defeat the second phase of the Unova Pokemon League as well. I appreciate you for watching. This is a video I would say I'm proud to have made. So this is a video that I have the courage to say. Make sure to subscribe, and I think this is where it ends. And just like that, see you guys on my next video. Take care, and cheers from KbeatZ.